Inside Utah Politics.
Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Glenn Mills. It is time to go inside Utah politics. We do begin this morning with State Senator Wayne Harper, who was recently elected as Vice President of the National Conference of State Legislatures. Senator, great to have you back on the show. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for inviting me.
You bet. Important position here, so let's dig into it. First, talk to us about the NCSL and what it is. Give us a little background.
Thank you. National Conference of State Legislatures is the premier organization that represents the needs of all legislators plus their staff. So there are about 7,500 legislators in all of the chambers plus all the territories of the United States. And there's about 30,000 staff members. So we've got, nearly 40,000 people that this organization is responsible for. We go through and organize seminars, we have outreach, we have training sessions at NCSL, and we go through and try to help every member, regardless of their party, be successful in their legislative service.
And is every state represented in this group?
Every state, plus all the territories, plus we've got delegations from some 35 or 40 different countries who send their members of their parliaments or their assemblies to our annual meetings in order to get training and to interface and find out how they can serve as an elected official better as well.
And you already pointed out at this point, it is a bipartisan.
Definitely bipartisan.
Mm-hmm. You ran for vice president of this organization. What interested you in doing that?
I've been dealing with NCSL for over 2 decades. I've also attended other groups, Council of State Governments, American Legislative Exchange Conference. They're all great organizations. This one, to me, NCSL, is the most bipartisan and most inclusive, where people go through and most of the times take off their party labels and say, okay, let's talk about education, transportation, child welfare, federal mandates, safety, all of those different issues border in that, and just say, okay, where are the 80% of the things that we agree to as Americans, because we're all Americans. Let's focus on those things and then work on the things where we disagree on a partisan basis and put those to a side for right now and then deal with those later as the needs come up.
So you will take on the role of vice president, and you were elected to that. You made a decision to run for that. And now you'll kind of ascend into leadership for the organization. Explain how all of that works.
Yeah, it's a very competitive process. Anywhere between 4 and 10 people will go through and apply to be the vice president. And this is important to remember. The role of vice president and president, it changes every other year. So this year, we were electing Republican. Last year it was a Democrat. The year before that was Republican. Next year it's going to be a Democrat. Mm-hmm. So we always have of the 4 key officers, 2 members of one party and 2 members of the other. So I interviewed, there are 4 great other people, one from Maine, one from Montana, one from Kentucky, and myself. We all submitted our names. We went through a pre-interview process, pre-qualification. Then after that, there was a nominating committee who spent an entire day interviewing us and others in order to find out who should be the next leadership, both on the vice president plus members of our executive committee. After they did that, it came out that I was selected, which I was really pleased and humbled, knowing how much work is ahead of me for the next 4 years, because I will go from vice president, president-elect, to president in 2 years, in 2024, and then president emeritus. All that time representing Utah, as well as all the other states and territories in the country.
And what will be your focus as you shift through those various leadership roles?
We've got changing demographics. We've got changing budgets. We have a real issue right now with inflation, things like that. We spent a lot of time last week talking about how do we deal with inflation, how do we go through and make sure that everybody's budgets are okay. Most every state has robust budgets because of the infusion of money. In 2 years, will that be the same case? I don't know. So budget, but most of all, I want to focus on the fact that we are Americans, and it's time for us to come together and not say, he said, she said, pointing fingers at each other. we need to work together. So that's my main focus is inclusion and acceptance and making sure that everybody has a seat at the table and has an equal voice.
How will your experience here in the Utah Senate, and you were in the House as well?
Yes.
Right. How will your experience in the Utah Legislature impact the way you serve in this position?
You know, I think my service has well qualified me because I take on really tough issues, but I will go through and I'll have people who really like what I'm doing, people who don't like what I'm doing, and I'll get everybody, all the stakeholders together in a room and go through and vet the issues and say, here's what we can move forward on. Let's set aside this other stuff and work on it over the interim. My background in inclusion, in budgets, in running the floor of the Senate has prepared me to go through and really lead this organization and step up and have everybody feel like they are valued and involved.
So when you come together as a group and then you go off to your various states, home states, and go to work, what impact does being together as this organization play across the country?
You know, great question, Glenn. We have the opportunity to go through and debate and discuss issues, but more importantly, we create relationships and network with other legislators. And, you know, for example, like today, I was texting, calling with 2 legislators from different states who said, now, how do you handle this issue in your state? How are elections run? How do you handle this issue of transportation? Yesterday, I was dealing with somebody on child welfare. And a day before that, somebody wanted to talk about housing and homelessness. So we go through and create this great network, and I'm able to share, as do a lot of my colleagues, the Utah way and our values, and people are saying, hey, that may work for my state. Let me go through and massage it, and I'll get back with you. So we're resources to each other, and I love helping other people.
And I assume that works reverse as well.
Absolutely.
You probably get good ideas from your colleagues in other states as well. You are known as one of the top producers in the Senate. In fact, the last time I had you on the show, I believe it was because you were the top producer, and we talked about some of the bills you passed. So when you talk about your responsibility here as a state senator, now the vice president of this national organization, you also have a job and a family. How do you balance all that?
That's the exact question that my wife asked. She said, now what are you going to do? You didn't get more hours in the day, so that will go through and reduce the hours that I sleep, because my commitment is to make sure that work is taken care of. My constituents in my state Senate district are taken care of. Budget issues are done, as well as helping my colleagues around the state, around the states, and in other countries. I'm just going to do it. I know that I have to step up, and I'm just going to do it.
The hard-hitting, important question, was your wife okay with that answer?
Her thing was, I hope so. She's trusting me to make sure that it happens well.
All right. Hey, thanks so much. Appreciate your time, and we'll follow your journey as you go through this. Thanks for being here with us. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, Glenn. Thank you so much.
You bet. Still to come.